Recent surveys are showing that financial stress is spiking in the US, and I'm not really surprised. But I do want to show y'all how to make this money. So let's talk about different things you can invest in, because if that's you, if you feeling the stress, you got to figure out how you're going to make it flip, right? Whether it's a small flip or a big flip. Let's talk numbers, because Bank of America just dropped some serious stats for this survey. As y'all can see, I got the debt pulled up. The U.S. American debt, household debt hits a record 18 trillion, right? But Bank of America's recent survey came out, said that 47% of U.S. workers feel financially well. This is down from 52% earlier this year. We still got a few more to go. So hopefully that doesn't continue, right? But out of that 47%, 85% carry debt and 26% actively seek help for savings and debt management. That's what we here for, though, right? I do want to help people on my channel save money, make money, manage their money. So if there's ever any topics regarding any of those things that you want me to cover, I'm going to cover them. But if there's ever any, feel free to put them in the comments. I just want to make sure, I'm really helping my channel and everything that we need, right? I want to address this 26%, right? We all got money, and some people just have money sitting in a savings account, and I get it, right? I get that. We'll talk about why you're not really making the most out of your money by leaving it in a savings account in another video, all right? But check out this debt, right? This blue, for those of y'all who can't see, the dark blue right here is the mortgage debt. The lighter blue is going to be automobile loans. The orange is going to be student loans. The red is going to be credit card debt. The gray is going to be other debt. And then there's a blue pandemic line up there. So yeah, that's a lot of mortgage debt for a rich real estate country. It's very interesting to me. But let's talk about, I want to update y'all on these numbers, right? We get CPI this week. We got September 16th through the 19th are going to be very important days. Rate cuts may or may happen depending on CPI data this week. I'm going to give y'all some numbers, some stats that y'all got to pay attention to, right? So let's talk stats. September job slowdown, I can't even speak. September job slowdowns and Fed rate cut expectations. The U.S. economy added about 22,000 jobs in August, and unemployment rose about 4.3%. So this is all the next pair of data we get is going to help the Fed decide whether they want to cut rates or just leave it as is. They did signal that they want to cut, but this data is really the CPI expectations, right? September 11th, that's this week. September 11th, we get some CPI data. Headline CPI is forecast to show a year-over-year 2.9%, right? So when they say they're forecasting, they're basically saying that they're guesstimating that it's going to be a year-over-year increase of 2.9%, which is going to be up from 2.7% in July, right? So if the stats are coming in high, we need to pay attention, or low, we need to pay attention. Then there's core CPI data, which is excluding food and energy because those are usually very high, so they exclude them. They get a different metric, I guess. It's anticipated to remain elevated at 3.1%. And then, a 0.3% change is expected in both, a monthly change. So if the CPI exceeds the expectations, we could see what they call a delay in the rate cut, right? So if it comes in better than they thought, right? So they're thinking 2.9% for headline CPI and 3.1 for core. If it comes in more than that, it could delay that whole rate cut right there. I think people are talking 2 rate cuts by 2026, which would be amazing for the markets. The markets would love that. I really do believe that the markets would love that. So if they come in lower, just know that the rate cuts are coming in guaranteed. The rate cuts guaranteed coming. If the data is just what it is, I still think we get rate cuts, truthfully. And then, do your own research. Usually when that happens, the market is going to embrace that. They're going to embrace that, to say the least. But I want everybody to remember that we are at market all-time highs. So don't get too excited. I've been at all-time highs before and thought that, we going to the moon, and the rug got pulled so fast that I couldn't even make a move by the time I even realized what was going on. So I want to make sure y'all are paying attention to that. But I did want to not only highlight some ETFs today, I wanted to highlight some crypto. I think crypto, especially like the main ones, Bitcoin, Ethereum, I think you're going to get a lot of bang for your investment, whether it's $5 or $500. Find a way to get it into some crypto. Do your own research. Obviously, it's a very risky thing to invest in, but I think for the next 6 months, I believe, based off what I know, my research, you're going to get a strong return in crypto. They're talking about BTC going to 150. It's currently at 111. I got in, I bought some more. I already have Bitcoin. I've always been a fan of Bitcoin since 2020. Especially when no one believed it. I used to talk about it all the time. But so I do have Bitcoin, but then I bought some more last week at 110. And I want to, if I can get it at lower than 110, 108, I'll go, get it at 108 as well too. If it drops back down, I'm currently watching it, but I do want to get into Ethereum. And if I can go into what Bitcoin is. If someone doesn't understand what Bitcoin is, if you're not understanding it, please let me know in the comments so I can explain it to you in the next video. I don't want to make everything like a how-to 101 video. I just want to lightly go through a few things, and if there's more y'all want to talk about, y'all could just let me know in the comments, and we could duke it out. But yeah, Ethereum. I've always been intrigued by Ethereum because that's what a lot of the people-to-people are going to be trading on. Once our world, Web3 world, and we get to that next level, a lot of transactions happen with Ethereum. Like, it's like using your debit card or your credit card. That would be essentially the Ethereum, that you're able to make transactions with it when you're out and about, when you're in different countries, you're able to make transactions. That's like a little example. With BTC, you can't really make transactions like that unless you're in Venezuela, because they've converted to BTC. That's a BTC country, if you didn't know. But yeah, so that's why Ethereum is high. I would say like BTC is like the mother, Ethereum's like the daughter, and then, maybe like XRP is like the grandchild, but I'm still working on my XRP knowledge. I'm not really fully there yet, but it's very affordable. So that's why my thinking cap is on. But I like Ethereum. I like BTC. And you don't need a gazillion dollars to invest in this stuff. I did not have $110,000 when I invested in BTC last week. I invested in what I could. Right? We got to stop making excuses for not being invested in these markets, or not just like over time, right? Let's talk about what I call cash-like stocks. So when I say invest in some cash-like stocks, that means something that's like, all this is you're making an investment, and it could go south, it could go north. But there's some stocks that, they just hold their value. They might have some down times, but over time, through average, like a 365 calendar, they hold up pretty well. And, Apple has always been that for me. You get a dividend with Apple, it's safe, and I call cash like stocks, the stocks you think are going to be here in the next 20 years, and they're really generating money. The Googles, the Microsofts, Apple, I can go on for days, but I think, you could Google some ask Google to give you some cash-like stocks and look into, somewhere to store your money like that versus it not really gaining money in a savings account. It could be gaining dividends, and your value could be growing in a stock like Apple. But do your own research. Obviously, Apple is definitely embracing this new dynamic that we're going with the world. I'm gonna call it Trumpito got, them to agree that he's getting everybody to agree to invest in America. So we'll see what the future of Apple is, but Apple's gonna be one of America's babies, and I really don't see it going anywhere. Their products, they just need that new product of whatever the new generation, and I think that they'll be straight. But I don't know what you think about Apple. Is anybody else invested in Apple? Can anybody else speak on it other than me? Right? I don't want nobody to think I'm biased, but yeah, I've been loving my Apple investment. It's done very well for me, and I just like always, I always wish I just would have poured more into it. Right? All right, let's talk about an ETF for those people who have no clue. You don't want to deal with the day-to-day components of investing. It's too much stress for you, or you don't have time. You have other things to do. Maybe you're a nurse. You want to focus on your other work, and you just want to make sure your money is being put in rotation, being put to work while you're focusing on other things. That's what ETFs are for. And what ETFs are, they hold multiple companies, like sometimes some of the biggest companies. So it'll be like, let's say if I had this ETF, I had my own ETF, right? Shyland ETF. And I held Google, Tesla, Microsoft, Take-Two Interactive, and NVIDIA. And pretty much like if all those are doing great, or maybe if two are not doing so well, the other three are possibly carrying. So it kind of makes it easier for you to invest in a bunch of companies without having to do all the work, right? But if you do pick an ETF, make sure you're aware of what percentage of each stock they're holding in the portfolio. Just make sure you're aware. Sign up for the newsletter. Like, stay in tune of whatever changes are happening so that you know like where your money's going. But there's plenty of ETFs. There's Bitcoin ETFs. There's housing ETFs, REITs. We were having a conversation about REITs today, so I'm looking into some REITs to share with everybody and even invest in myself, because the U.S. housing is getting very, very interesting. So we got to see where the world takes us, y'all. We got to see where the world takes us, though. But I'm excited where we're going right now. I think the market's ranging, and we just need to watch it. The next week or two is going to be very important, right? In financial history, it's going to be very important financial history. Tariffs, everything is just, we're in a special time. And, these special times historically bring special moments for people like me and you to slide up in this market and make some money. So that's what we're here to do. I appreciate y'all watching another episode of Shinance. Let's get it until next week. Y'all thought it was over this week. Nah, we back, baby.